Risk management life cycle in CISSP. It has three stages. The first stage of the risk management life cycle is assessment. In this, you try and assess by the techniques using threat identification, vulnerability identification, control analysis, the likelihood determination, the impact analysis is done, the business impact analysis is done, and this is the phase where you assess thoroughly and identify the weak or the vulnerable areas that could lead to a potential impact. The second phase of risk management life cycle is analysis. Analysis is where you try or give a firm conclusion over the risk. So there are two types of analysis. One is qualitative and another is quantitative. Qualitative is purely based on judgment and it's subjective, whereas quantitative, there is a formula to it and you derive to a value and you decide on based on the value, you decide on the responses. So in the quantitative, the formula used is one, you need to identify the asset value. Two is the exposure factor, the attack surface, to what extent the asset can be compromised. Three, you need to identify the annual rate of occurrence. So annual rate of occurrence is the frequency the risk might occur in a year. So the formula goes this way. First, you have to calculate single loss expectancy, which is asset value into exposure factor. Then, once you identify single loss expectancy, your next step is to identify the annual loss expectancy, which is SLE into ARO. ARO is the annual rate of occurrence, and SLE we calculate out of asset value and exposure. So this way, the ALE is calculated, and after this, a risk value is generated with which we go to the next stage where we decide on what should be done to the risk. So there are four responses to the risk. One is avoidance, where you take no action and simply avoid the risk. Transfer. Transfer is where you buy an insurance or transfer the risk to another party. Acceptance. Acceptance is where you know the risk, but you don't want to do anything about it, and you accept it the way it is. So usually, risk acceptance is done when the 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 risk impact is not very high. So in those cases, many organizations choose to accept the risk. And lastly, mitigate. Mitigate is where you actually work on the risk and try to um, put a control on the risk and try to mitigate the risk. So in order to mitigate the risk, there are three approaches. One is administrative approach, second is logical approach, and third is physical approach. In administrative approach, you put a policy or a procedure in place in order to mitigate the risk. Logical or technical control is where you put technology in order to mitigate the risk. And lastly, physical control is where you use a tangible asset in order to mitigate the risk. So this is how the risk management life cycle goes. Thank you.